Daf no space. Begin the current Daf Mesechta Yevamos Daf Kufya test. We begin with the final parak Mesechta Yevamos called Parak Isha Basra, because again it's another parak opening by Isha, so they call it Isha Basra, the last woman. That's the last parak regarding. We continue the theme regarding the mitzvah sabal, regarding when the husband dies, what the halachic status of this woman. She corresponds because of the Cheskel to any time that everyone is joining us for today's daf. Some of this we're discussing in today's daf are the opening case of our parak for Isha Shalom Val B'Tzuras from Din Sayam. For a woman and her co-wife, for a husband and her co-wife go overseas and they tell her that her husband died. Mishnah tells us that she's not allowed to marry anyone else and she's not allowed to do yibum until she finds out maybe her co-wife who went with her husband is pregnant, and then she wouldn't be able to go ahead and get married and do yibum, as we'll explain the Gemara. And that the Gemara is going to explain it's going to Gemei who's chachin l'meuta is concerned for the minority, and conscious the Chacham would not agree to this halacha because they're lo chachin l'meuta. As the Gemara will explain, Roiv and Chazaka, the Roiv is stronger than the Chazaka, but sometimes you'll have other elements that will combine. So begin the current daf Kufya test. Says the Mishnah, Isha Shalach Ba'al B'Tzuras from Din Sayam. If you have a woman that her husband and her co-wife went overseas, then people came along and came and told her, Meis Balecha. They testified that her husband died. So in this case, the halacha is, although generally if you have witnesses say your husband died, you're allowed to go ahead and remarry, or if there's no children to do yibum. In this case, Lo Tinase, she's not allowed to get married to anyone else because her husband left without ever having had children, so therefore that would require yibum. At the same time, she cannot do yibum either to the yavam. Why? Because maybe her co-wife had a child. And if she had a child, then there's no head to be yibum, so then this is an eser eshesach. Now the Gemara is going to ask, why can't you marry someone else? Just do chalitza, and then you could get married in Mamanavshach. If there's a child from the tzara, then you're exempt from yibum. And if not, if there was a mitzvah yibum, he did chalitza. So why are you saying that lo tinase v'lo tisyam? But that's what the Mishnah says, that she's not going to go ahead and get married nor do yibum until they find out that maybe she is pregnant. Who is that? It's tzarasa, which Yevamos going to explain. That wording is very interesting. Shemu muberes hi tzarasa al kaponim. But until she finds out that maybe her co-wife is pregnant, up until that point where she verifies one way or the other, she cannot do yibum and neither could she get married. That's one case. Now, let's say her husband went overseas to visit her mother-in-law overseas. Now, when the mother-in-law had left years before, she didn't have any other son besides this woman's husband. So we have a presumption that there is no yavam. And now they get reports that the husband died overseas. Says the Mishnah, she doesn't have to be concerned that maybe her mother-in-law had another son and created for her a yavam, and therefore she would not be able to marry anyone else. As Rashi explains, even though we just said before that we are concerned that maybe the co-wife had a child, so why are we not concerned that the mother-in-law had a child? What's the difference? So the difference is very important. This is one of the themes running through today's daf, is that whatever the co-wife has as a child, whether she has a boy or a girl, that will preclude her from the mitzvah of yibum, because the husband died with children. But the mother-in-law, even if she has a child, that will not require this woman to yibum only if she had a boy. That much we're not concerned that maybe she had a baby and maybe that baby was a boy. So there's another variable that's involved when it comes to the mother-in-law in contrast to the tzara. So therefore, you're not concerned that maybe she had a baby and maybe the baby was a boy and that she has a yavam somewhere out there in Medina Siyam. Therefore, she could just marry someone else. Now, but let's say her mother-in-law had left. When they went overseas, they were moving and they were making aliyah and they went out and she left Malaya. She left when she was pregnant. Oh, then says the Tanakam, then chesheshes. Then you have to be concerned that's already removed one variable. Already know she's having a child. Question is it Zachar Nekeba? That you have to be suspectful that there was a boy and therefore she's not allowed to marry Lashok. She would have to be concerned that maybe she has a Yavim. Rabbi Shloimy says, no, he says, you still don't have to be concerned. Why? Because he says there's still two variables over here working against the mitzvah of Yibum. You have maybe she miscarried, and even if she didn't miscarry, maybe it was a girl. So therefore, it's still not so definitive for us to be concerned for, and therefore he says that you don't have to be concerned that she can marry. Now the Gemara makes a diuk regarding the words in the ratio, which we said if this woman and her husband and their co-wife went overseas, and they told her that her husband died, she not get married, and nor do yibum until she finds out maybe muberes hit sarasa. The Gemara says my hit sarasa. You're saying that because maybe she, who was saying that is the tzara, maybe she's pregnant, so why is saying hit sarasa? So it says Gemara HaKamash was coming to teach us is he tzarasa, which is lahat tzarahu dechashina. We're only concerned for this co-wife who we know he was married to her and they went overseas. That's who we're saying we're concerned that maybe she had a child. But if witnesses come and tell us that that co-wife is not pregnant, but for another co-wife, that lechashinim, we're not concerned that maybe overseas he married another woman, maybe that woman gave birth, and maybe that will be that there's a yavam, that there's a mitzvah that is exemption from yibum, and we're saying that no, that she would be permitted to do yibum. We wouldn't be concerned that another tzara was married and that maybe she had a child and therefore that would preclude her from yibum. That we're not concerned. That's why we say the extra words hi tzara to say that for that co-wife would be concerned, but not for any other co-wives. Now the Mishnah said, okay, we said this woman is a little bit in a stuck situation. She can't get married, like we said, because we have to be suspect that maybe, like the chazaka, there was no children, and so you have mitzvah yibum. So you have issa yavam l'shut. At the same time, you can't do yibum because maybe the co-wife had a baby, and then there's no mitzvah yibum. There's issa yishasach. V'chul, etc. Like we said, until she finds out, is the co-wife pregnant? Is she not pregnant? She has to verify that fact. So the Gemara asks, Bishlam yibumi like. So the Gemara says, wait a second. I understand why you can't do yibum. Why? Because the dilma me'abra, maybe the co-wife got pregnant, and it comes out that this woman who's left back over here, who didn't get to go on that trip, and she hears her husband died, maybe it's a biblical issa be'shasach. Okay, but why you tell me she cannot marry anyone else? Her husband died, that much we know. We have two Edom saying that he died. We're just not sure whatever happened with the co-wife, if she got pregnant or not. Why can't she not marry someone else? This halacha we always know in Shas and Torah, we go based on right, laws of majority. Go after most women. If you talk statistically, most women get pregnant and have children. If you go after laws of majority, we could presume that the co-wife had a baby. She had a baby, the husband died with children. She can marry whoever she wants to. So says the Gemara, so our Mishnah says that she cannot go ahead and get married. Shall we say it's Remeir who he's concerned for the minority, which we find throughout Shas and Chul Navav Medalev. One example is by Kutim. The Kutim were a group that were brought by the Assyrian king when they exiled the 10 tribes, where they were guys on all the Kutim that they treated them like Oivdei Avodah Zarah. Why? Because by minority, they found the image of a dove on Har Gerizim, which they were bowing down to. So because of that minority, they treated them all like Oivdei Avodah Zarah. So that's because he's concerned for minorities. So our Mishnah L'chaira is like Remeir. Because if you halik did Rabbanan, then you go based on majorities, so let her go ahead and get married. We could presume the woman had a child. Says the Gemara, no. Afil tema Rabbanan. You could even say a Mishnah like Rabbanan. Why? When do the rabbis go on the laws of majority? This is very important for the laws of Roiv. Is Rubi Isikaman? Is the majority that's in front of us? What does that mean, the majority that's in front of us? Which says a lot of dafka because they don't disagree in this case, but let's say the 9 stores, which we learned in the Braisa in Chulun Daf Tzadihim and Aleph, which is, let's say there's 9 stores that are selling food, and you're finding in front of the stores. The law is you go after the majority, that since the stores are in front of us, we see that most of the stores sell kosher meat. There's one store on this, deli row that's not kosher. So that's what we say, Meruba de Parish. We say that it's coming from the majority, but that's a majority that's in front of us. Or let's say, for example, the Sanhedrin. Let's say you have the court, and you have 12 judges saying that he's not guilty. You have 11 judges saying that he's guilty. The halacha is, as the Gemara Sanhedrin says, the Memamarav, that he's going to be not guilty because the majority is saying that he's zakai. And that's what's called isikaman. They're in front of us. The judges are here. That's actually the source of this halacha. Maybe that's why they say go based on laws of majority. But a majority that's not in front of us. For example, over here, to say that you're going after most women, those statistics are not necessarily something that are concrete. Most women, how does that tell me anything about this? It's about most women in the world. Ruba de Isakaman is something right here, the numbers are here, that you could crunch those numbers and you see clearly that's a right. But Ruba de Lesikaman, you go based on statistics of the people in the world, the rabbis don't go after majority. That doesn't tell me anything that what's going to happen over here. After age 40, then this is what the child is going to come out when you're pregnant. I don't know. That's a Ruba de Lesikaman. That doesn't tell me anything definitively over here concrete. So therefore, you could even say the Mishlek Rabbanim because this is a Ruba de Lesikaman and they don't go based on laws of majority. Says Gemara, but by Katana, how can you say that? By a young boy, young girl, that's a Deruba de Lesikaman. That's a majority that's not in front of us in the sense that it's a statistic that's a global, but it's not something that has a concrete linear explanation. It's just that if you go and you crunch the numbers, you'll say that that's the majority of what usually happens. And the rabbis do go after the laws of majority. The time I learned the Brisa. Katna Katana, a young boy, young girl, Meir says they cannot do chalitza nor do yibum. To which Amalei Meir, the rabbi said to a Meir, what you said about that they can't do chalitza, you're right. Because ish kasem b'parashim, the parasha of chalitza said the word ish, which means an adult. And we compared the woman to the man to say that they both need to be an adult to do chalitza. Why would you say they can't do yibum? So Amalei said to them, I'll tell you what. A cotton, we don't know, he's too young to figure out regarding his ability to have children. He might turn out to be a sris that cannot have children. And katana shematim to alnus. And the minor girl might be an alnus who cannot have children. And if that's the case and they're doing yibum, and then to it comes out that they're encountering someone who's a illicit relationship because it's a eshasach. So therefore they can't do yibum because you might run into that problem. No, zil basa reb katanim. The katanim go after the majority of boys. Those boys, you don't have to have anxiety about what's going to be with your son. Generally, most of them are not srisin. And zilbas are Reb Ketanis, and go after most girls. Reb Ketanis love islands, and they're not islandness. So therefore, they disagree and they hold that no, cotton and the Ketana could be given. So one thing we see is that the Rabbanan hold of Roiv even by Ruba de Lesikaman, because this is not a majority that's in front of us. You don't see the 10 stores. You don't see the 21 judges. It's not something that's in front of us until they go based on majority. So the Gemara says, Eli, you're right, Machvart, it's clear, Masnin Reb Meir. You have to say, our Mishnah is like a Meir, who he is Chayish L'mi'ute. And therefore, in this case, where it says that they're not allowed to go ahead and tinase, why not get married? Most women have children, you can presume your co-wife had. Yes, but a minority will not have a child, and therefore, we have to be suspect for that, and therefore, loy tinase, you cannot get married. But the Gemara has a problem with this, because b'mayu kimta. So what do you explain in the Mishnah? Like Rameh, you're saying it must be going like Rameh. But in a seifa, look at the next case the Mishnah discusses. A similar type of a case, but it wasn't her co-wife that was overseas. Her mother-in-law was overseas. So he said, she does not have to be concerned that maybe the mother-in-law had another son, and therefore there's a yavam, and therefore she wouldn't be able to marry other people, because maybe she has a mitzvah of yibum. Says the Gemara, you're right. Although, if it's going to be a boy, that's a miut, as the Gemara is going to explain, but halach acharev nashim, go after most women. In other words, since most women become pregnant, you cannot say that having a boy is what's called a mi'uta dimi'uta. It's not a minority of a minority. It would be one minority. Because B'rayv Noshim is Abras V'Yolas. Let's get it straight. Most women become pregnant and have a child. Okay. Mi'ut Mapilis. There's a minority of women that will miscarry. Okay. Now, but V'chola Yolas, whoever has a child, 50-50. Maybe it's going to be a boy, maybe it's going to be a girl. So if you go ahead and you combine the numbers, if you put together the minority of women who miscarry, lemechz in the cave is to the other 50% of those who have children are going to be girls. So it comes to Rabbi Zchara Miuta. So only thing it is that a boy is going to be a minority. But if you tell me that Mishleger Meir, Sovalechish, be concerned maybe the mother-in-law, the Shviga, had another boy, and you have a mitzvah yibum, you have a isser yibam l'shuk. How can you say, if you're telling me the Mishleger Meir of Hishlo Chamas, Ein Sheshes, and then you could go ahead and marry someone else because there was no other brother, but why are you not concerned? The Shviga had another son. You tell me it's a miyut, Remei is chayish v'miyut, and you're saying the Mishleger Meir.
We also have 50% of women that are past childbearing age, so that would make it into miyut to the miyut.
It sounds like that she's not past. I mean, it sounds like that.
No, I'm talking about.
Oh, you mean the shviger?
You're
talking about the shviger? Maybe the shviger past the age of the.
So she's not pregnant.
No, we don't know for that. Maybe.
So it's not goy blush.
I mean, let's say she was 30s. I mean, in her 30s. Yeah.
No, but we're taking on. Not she specifically, we're taking out the Roy Nosher, I mean in the world.
Right, I hear. Does that mean most women that are childbearing age or most women in the world? If it sounds like it's most childbearing age women, that's the right. So says the Gemara, Dilma, so the Gemara has an answer. It says maybe Kivan the Ichazka Lashuk. Since in the Seifa what happened is that she had a chazaka. The chazaka was that she was permitted to marry someone else. Why? There was no son when the mother-in-law left. She married the only child, the only son. And there was chazaka, she can marry whoever she wants to. So lechayish. So therefore, since we have a chazaka, we're not concerned for the miyat. Because you have a chazaka. Chazaka is, right, usually lechayish l'miyuta. And Chazaka definitely is one of the ways we establish the parameters of the Metzias. Chazaka says, no, we're presuming that you go to marry someone else. Says the Gemara, so what do you do with the ratio then? The Chazak Liyibum, there, what happened is that the Tzara had gone with the husband overseas. She didn't have a child yet, she wasn't even pregnant. And you're telling me that Shleitis Yabim V'Loiti Naseh. So over there, so why didn't you go with the chazaka there too? The chazaka is that she could do yibum, because there was no child when they left. So why can't you do yibum? So, which Tais explains that the sakadaitach now was just like you're going based on the chazaka, so it would help together with the meat of mapilos, and that therefore you should be able to do yibum. Obviously it's a different type of a case, but still the Gemara is saying, okay, you have a chazaka, so go with the chazaka, and then why don't you let her do yibum? So Amar of Nachman and Rav Baravu, he says, no, I'll explain to you the difference between the ratio and the sefer. Although they both have chazakas, and the ratio we're not going with the chazaka, and the sefer we are going with the chazakas, because the ratio is the kares. What's the chazaka telling you that you want to go with the chazaka and the ratio? You want that the woman should be allowed to, when she hears her husband die, to do yibum, because we don't know of any children, with her yavam. Well, if you get this wrong, it's a kares that you're trying to do now. You want to marry your brother's wife. That's Issachari's. That's Chashash. There they were concerned that maybe her co-wife did become pregnant and she's asked to do yibum. Seifa, the Isalav. What are you trying to do in the Seifa? What does the Chazaka want you to do? Want you to go ahead and marry someone else because we don't know of any Yavam. The Shviger didn't have any other sons. So the Chazaka is telling you that you can marry when you hear your husband died, you can marry whoever you want to. So that chazak is taking you for Isalab, like Chashu. They weren't concerned that maybe the mother-in-law became pregnant and therefore she's a bit in Lashuk. Rather, so that we rely on the chazaka that says Lashuk because that's the kalas and this is just a lot. But Amar Rabbi doesn't like this answer. He says, Nefti, let's see. Who cares? Both are biblical prohibitions. Mali is a karas, mali is a lot. What's the difference if it's a punishment of karas, a punishment of negative prohibition? That you think we don't have to be concerned for a suffix on the Isser Lav, just like we're concerned for a suffix at Isser Karas? What do you mean? It's a suffix. It's not what's called like a rabbinic harchaka for something that's permitted. For that, you could make a differentiation and say, for Karas, they made a harchaka. For love, they didn't make a harchaka, but something that's permitted. But here it's not like a harchaka. Here it's a bona fide suffix da'iraisa. We always know you go l'chumra by biblical prohibition. If you're going to marry l'shuk, it's Issa Yevamos Daf. They say Eshes HaMesach Chutzi, not let him marry someone else. So who cares that it's an Issa Lab? how could that be the reason why you would go with the chazaka if you might be violating an issa deraisa of a lav? What's the difference between those two halachas? So Rabbi gives a different reasoning to differentiate why by the ratio we don't go with the chazaka and to say if we do go with the chazaka. As we continue to the base. Ratio, in the case of the ratio again, where this woman's husband went without any children with the tzara, so the chazaka brings her to liyibum. So you're right, as we were saying, this is what we're asking. The chazaka should make that she should be able to do yibum because we don't have of any children. But the ruba, the laws of majority, brings her that actually she should be permitted lishuk, to marry actually not the Yevamim, actually other people. Because like we said already on Amad Aleph, most women become pregnant and have a child. So we could presume based on laws of majority that the co-wife had a child. And therefore that exempts her too. So if you have a contradiction between Chazaka and Roiv, Chazaka is saying, do Yibum, because there was no children. Roiv is telling me, no, that we could presume that there was a child over here, so she's exempt from Yibum, she can marry other people. But Chazaka le'adav kiruba. A Chazaka, the presumed status, because the Chazaka really is not really telling us anything, depends how you learn the lumdus, but it's just saying, okay, we remember with status quo that a Chazaka is. But Roiv is telling me in reality, which continuously is changing, that we'll go based on laws of majority, that we're going to go based on that we're not going to go based on the Chazaka that she should do Yibum, rather that she should go ahead and marry someone else. So therefore you can't do Yibum, because majority is stronger. Majority is contradicting the Chazaka to do Yibum. Now at the same time, the Aisi mi'uta de mapilas, if you bring together the minority of women that miscarry, samech lechazaka, and you put it together with the chazaka that she requires Yibum, that she cannot marry someone else, so essentially v'havli palgo palga, it's like 50-50, because it's not really just a majority against the chazaka anymore, because the chazaka also has the miyat on its side, so it like evens out the score. So it's not just a bona fide roiv against chazaka, it's the miyut together with the chazaka. So it's like 50-50. So therefore, loitinase, she can't marry lashuk either because we're like a mayor who is chayish even for miyuta, for sure if like we're considering it like 50%, but like tisyab, neither could she do yibim either, like we said, because you have a right that's contradicting that chazaka. So that's why in the ratio we said loitinase, loitisyab. On the other hand, Seifa, when it's talking about the mother-in-law, not the co-wife, there the chazaka was lashuk. The presumption was that she can marry someone else when her husband dies, because originally when the mother-in-law left, there was no other sons that she had besides her only son, and there's no yavam. So if the husband dies, she could go ahead and marry someone else. Now, Veruba lashuk, the laws of majority also tells me that she can marry someone else, because even if you're going to tell me that the mother-in-law became pregnant, maybe she had a girl, maybe she miscarried, because most pregnancies are going to be either a girl or an aborted fetus, as we said before, because half of those that are born are girls, and a minority of pregnancies are miscarried. So it comes out that to have a living boy is a minority regarding children. Oh, so here you also have the chazaka together with the right. Chazaka said you can marry someone else when the husband died, and the rabbis also tell me you could go to the shuk. So therefore, that weakens the concern for the minority of a boy to the extent that essentially having a boy from the mother-in-law is like a minority of a minority, because you're fighting both a roiv and a chazaka. And although Meir is chayish from mi'uta, but a minority of a minority, that he wouldn't be concerned, and therefore the Mishnah could even be like Meir, but the difference is, in the Reishut there's just one mute. There's like we said, we're calling it like a palga in a way. But in the Seifa, it's a miuta de miuta, and that Meir is not concerned for, and therefore he held that you could go ahead and get married. Then the Mishnah, again in the ratio, we said loitinase v'loitisyav mechulu. In the opening halacha of the Mishnah, we said when, let's say, the husband went with the co-wife overseas, and we didn't know of any children, we said no, she cannot get married, cannot do yibum until you find out if the co-wife was pregnant. Like we said, if she's pregnant, so then you can marry someone else. But if not, I mean, if we don't know, so you can't do yibum because maybe she had a child. On the same time, you cannot marry other people because maybe she didn't have a child, and you have a mitzvah of yibum. And although that's the road that she had, but remains chai shmiyuta. That's what the halacha was. But the Gemara has a question that says, wait a second. Well, oila? What? You tell me that she cannot get married, cannot do yibum forever until you find out what happened? Let's say for years they can't find out, they can't track down that co-wife. Why would you say until you verify that? You could do chalitza memanavshach and you could go ahead and marry lashuk. Well, what's the problem? Either way, if she had a baby boy, so fine, you're exempt. If she didn't, so you had chalitza. So what's the problem? Why are you saying that you have to verify this fact? So actually, the Gemara's machlek is exactly how to qualify this halacha. Amaziri, he says you're right. Le'atzma, meaning because of the woman herself who was left back, who didn't go on the trip overseas, she has to wait shleish chadashim 3 months for herself, because every woman has to wait 3 months, even if her husband was overseas, which you don't have to be concerned that maybe she was pregnant, and you have to know the paternity of the child. No, because even the elderly woman or illness also have to wait 3 months after the husband's demise. As the Gemara says, Nachelis and Nachman Bez, we had halacha kulan trichas lahamdin. Every woman after the husband, if they want to go marry someone else, they have to wait 3 months. So that's automatic. This woman would have to wait 3 months. Now, lechaverta, because of her friend, her co-wife, who we said is maybe pregnant, the co-wife who's left back would have to wait tisha, would have to wait 9 months. Why? Because even if she does chalitza, she cannot get married within 9 months because maybe the co-wife is pregnant. And therefore then the child is going to be, let's say, a living child. The chalitza is not going to exempt her because it's the child that's exempting her. I mean, you can't, it's not chalitza, there's a child over here. But the child only exempts until the child is actually born, like we had some Daf Yomi above Med Aleph. So therefore, she would have to wait 9 months. You can't just say, okay, look, let's do chalitza and manavshach. Look, if there's a baby, not, and either way I'll be able to go free. Baby, I'll go free. No baby, you do chalitza. No, because if there is a baby, when she's in her pregnancy, that's not exempting yet, but at the same time, there's no chiyuv of chalitza. Chalitza can't do it for you because there is a child. What's exempting you is the child, but the child will only exempt once he's born. So that's what he says then, after 9 months, then you're right, you can do chalitza either way. If it is a baby, then you're exempt anyway. And if it's not, the chalitza letting you free, but it's got to be 9 months. You're right, the halacha was only up until expiration date of 9 months. That's the first opinion of Zivir. Chaninam, he says no. Yeah, the woman, because of herself, has to wait 3 months. Lechaverta, because of her co-wife, she has to wait le'olam, forever, until you verify if she had a baby or not. Until you verify that, she can never get married nor do yibum. So the Gemara says, why? V'tachletz do chalitza after 9 months, whatever it is that you want, then let her get married. If the co-wife had a baby, so she's exempt because there's a child, there's no mitzvah of yibum, she can marry if she wants to. If not, so the chalitza is letting her go. Why would you say it's asal oilam? So Bai Bar Oven, V'Chanina Bar Oven, Amr Tabayu, they both say that the reason is a gezer. It's a rabbinic decree. Shema Yehev Lad Ben Kayama, maybe it's going to turn out that the co-wife had a child that's living. Now, if you didn't know this, till 3 years later she comes back and she looks different and she lost weight, she has these children, what happened? Oh, you don't know what happened. She has children. Now, but now this woman didn't know about it, so she says she went and got married, so she waited 9 months, and she did chalitza just in case, right? Because we're not sure, did she have or not? Now the problem is, now it's going to come out that you're going to require an announcement that she was not a chalutza and that she's permitted l'kuhuna. You have to make an announcement because it turns out really there was no chalitza over here. Chalutza is forbidden to a kohen like a grusha. But she wasn't really chalutza because really what happened is that her co-wife had a baby and therefore that exempted her from yibum. So the chalitza was unnecessary. There was no chalutza. So you need an announcement now to say that this woman's allowed to go ahead and marry Kalim. So he goes, okay, but so have that kuruz. Why is that a reason why you can't do chalitza? No, because there might be those who were present at the chalitza, a very interesting procedure. They're there, they're watching the chalitza. Maybe the guy wasn't there when they made the announcement 2 years later that, this woman, they made a klap on the bima that this woman's not a chalutza because it turns out that really her co-wife had a baby. So if someone was there by the chalitza, but wasn't there by the achraza, but they're going to say, aha, and then 6 months later this woman marries a kohen, says, Kashar chalutza l'kohen. I was there at the chalitza, and the woman's marrying a kohen.
So Asara to marry a coin. That's it.
What?
It's just Asara to
Rather
marry a
than being,
coin.
rather than being an aguna. Yeah.
I don't know, could they do that? I guess they could say, don't marry a kohen.
Yeah.
Because of Chashash, Chalutza didn't hear Yair was Chalutza. You're destroying your life. It's a schwer sword to say.
Right. Saying, just say, make a xera that she shouldn't marry.
For her own benefit. So she doesn't say aguna.
Like plug. Yeah, interesting. Just say, don't marry a kohen. Would we do that? Yeah. So Al Kapanim, so that's what the Gemara says, that's the reason why that we're saying that it would be Asul Aylam. Yeah, Takasha cannot marry anyone because you're going to require kruz. It sounds like we're not going to do that. We're not going to say that she's forbidden to kuna. And you're going to make an announcement. You make an announcement, then, or maybe they'll make the mistake and they'll make that, they'll let her marry her and want to make a xeri of Asul for Kana. We don't find that they do something like that you should make it forbidden for Kahanim. Al Kapanim. So that's the problem that you're going to run into because someone's going to be at the. Because that's what I'm saying. It sounds like that we'll do that, but yeah, why make such a gazette? So someone's not going to be there. He's going to be the chalitza, not with the achraza, and you're going to see this quote unquote. He's going to think it's chalitza married to kohen because we're going to run into those problems. Just say no, she cannot go ahead and do anything until she verifies the status of her kohen. So the Gemara says, but the Gemara has a question. It's not from a Mishnah on the previous daf. Kofir Tchesim Abeis. The Mishnah said, "Nikli ben benin zayam." If a woman says, I know I left without any children, but actually when we were overseas, I had a boy. But V'amar, she says, what happened was it was an accident on our way back from the hospital of having a baby. Meis b'ni v'achkach, but it was an accident. And then my child died first, and then my husband died. So essentially what she's saying is that I have to do yibum like it originally was. Meaning originally she left without any children, and her husband died, she has to do yibum. Now she's saying she had a baby, but the boy died before the husband died. So the man, she's believed what she says that my son died first, then my husband. We're not concerned that, wait a second, maybe because she really likes her brother-in-law and therefore she's saying it that way. No. What's the reason? Because since anyway she left with a cheskes yibum, so her mouth that's saying that she's forbidden on the oven by saying I have a boy is the same mouth that's permitting her to the oven by saying, but he died first. That's a pesha also pesha. Now, but let's say let's say he says that my husband died first, and then my son died. Oh, so then ain't a menace. What essentially she's saying is that she had a son, but the son died an hour after the husband. That means at the time of his death, she was not zakuk liyibum. Then she's not allowed to marry elsewhere because since she left with a cheskes yibum, we're concerned that maybe because she hates her brother-in-law, and therefore she's saying, and that's why she's saying I had a son. So we don't believe her, but we are concerned for what she's saying. Maybe it's true. And therefore, she's forbidden to the Yavam, because maybe there was a son and maybe he did die second. So we can't let her go scot-free, so she'd have to do chalitza, but at the same time she cannot do yibum, because maybe what she's saying is true. And maybe she did have a son, and maybe the son died second. But this is what the Gemara's question is. But why are you not concerned for maybe what she's saying is true? You're saying you're concerned for it, maybe it's true. They'll also aid them, so maybe witnesses are going to come. But they're going to say like what she said, which is that maybe she wasn't Zocker for Yibum. They're going to come and they say, this woman wasn't lying. She had a boy. On the way back from the hospital, everyone knew over there that there was an accident, and then the husband died, and then a few hours later the baby died. And therefore it comes out that the chalitza that you're telling me that you're requiring was insignificant, was nothing. And comes out that she's permitted for kahuna. Okay. You're going to need an announcement that she's permitted to marry kahuna, but you told me that we don't allow such situations. Because then you might run into the problem, someone wasn't there at the cruise, and then she's going to marry a kohen, and then you're going to think that the chalutz is permitted to the kohen. So how could the Mishnah on the previous daf allow you to do chaletz of sebemis, but maybe Eidim are going to come, and then you're going to run into this problem of saying that the chalitza was not a chalutza? So my papa, he says, you're right, good question. He says, I'll tell you what. We're talking about begrusha. This woman was already divorced from another man, and therefore she was already passed off a kuna anyway. So therefore there's no problem about this woman Matzricha Kuruz the Kuhuna, because anyway she's forbidden. That's the case. But you're right, maybe if she was not a Gerusha, we wouldn't say Chalutza, we'd say Taka, you have to wait till you find out because we don't want to run into this problem about someone thinking Chalutza can marry a Kohen. Or he says a different answer. He says, but it's where the woman said, and you have to remember, this whole concern is all based on what she's saying. Without her words, we wouldn't be chayshish. She says, Ani bahu, me and him, meaning, and my son and my husband, we were holed up in a cave, and there was no one else with us to come and testify. So therefore, there's nothing to be concerned about that maybe witnesses are going to come. Meaning, even if you tell me the whole halacha of chayshul d'vareha is it requires us to do chalitza, not do yibum. Without her words, we would do yibum. So it's saying, but she's saying that no, I had a son and the son died a few hours later, and therefore you have to be concerned about what she's saying. You're requiring chalitza. We were asking, maybe witnesses are going to come along and verify what she said, and turns out that she didn't need chalitza, and therefore you're going to come out that the chalitza was. They're going to make an announcement and therefore she can marry. No, you're not going to have that because there was no one else over there to come along and say and verify what she was saying that she didn't require chalitza, because it was only she herself who made the situation of concern says that it was only us. So we know no witnesses are going to come over there, and therefore we're not going to run into problems that witnesses are going to verify her own words, which is only based on her. The concern is only from what she's saying, and therefore that's why you do chalitza. But you're right. If not, maybe like a Bayam Rabin or Pchinim Rabin said, you would be concerned, you wouldn't do chalitza and sebemes, you would have to wait, because you don't want to have the situation of Matzricha Kruz the Kuhn.
So why do we believe her?
Yeah.
No, because the whole thing is only based on her. There's whole concern over
She created a story.
She created the story, so the whole concern is coming from her. That's similar like a Pesha, also Pesha. I mean, they're only going to go based on what her story is. And therefore, we're not concerned that witnesses are going to back up and say, she didn't require Yibum Chalitza. Based on her words, she could go scot-free. You're saying, okay, really, we would do Yibum, but she's saying that she had a son and the son died second. Okay, we can't do Yibum, we'll do Chalitza. So maybe it's going to turn out that she didn't really require Chalitza. Maybe she's right. Maybe there was a boy, and then the boy died second. The witnesses are going to say then it's going to come out she wasn't a Chalitza. No, we're not concerned with that because she's saying herself that there was no one else there. So then that's where the whole concern is coming from. Now look at the next Mishnah, continuing on this theme regarding going overseas and dying. Shtei Yevamos. Two Yevamos, meaning it's the wife of two brothers. So like we have over here Reuben and Shimon, and Rachel and Leah. So these two women are they both are married to two brothers, and the two brothers took the brothers' trip to overseas. Now, Zuim Meres Meizbali. So this one says whether they were there or not, but this one says my husband died. Zuim Meres Meizbali. Each one of them is saying that my husband died. So the halacha is Zu Asura. Interesting. This one is forbidden to marry someone else. Why? Because the husband of the other one, meaning because of her yavam. Maybe the yavam is alive, and she's zakuked him. Now, even though his wife is saying that he died, she's not believed regarding her yavama that should allow her to marry, because as we said in the previous parak, that a yavama cannot testify for her yavimta, which is her brother's wife. It's one of the 5 women that's not testified, not believed to testify. So because of that, she's forbidden because of her husband. And Leah is forbidden because of Rachel's husband, because of Reuben. So although each one's believed to say her husband died, good, but now you have a brother-in-law. And there's mitzvah, so you can't just marry someone else. Although the wife is saying he's dead, but we don't believe her. So therefore, they're both forbidden. Now let's say, Lezu Eidim. Let's say one of them has witnesses that her husband died. Well, Lezu Ein Eidim, the other one does not have witnesses that her husband died. So here comes actually interesting. Esheyesh La Eidim, the woman that has witnesses that her husband died, is Asura, is forbidden to marry someone else. Why? Because of her Yavam. Maybe her Yavam is alive. Because the witness is not really helping her or anything. Because the woman herself is believed to say also that her husband died. That's not the point. The point is, but your Yavam is still alive possibly. But what's interesting is, Veshe'en la Edom Muteres. The one who doesn't have the witnesses, She's actually permitted to marry Lashuk. You know why? Because she says her husband died, and that she's believed. Regarding her Yavam, that we're not concerned because that man, there are witnesses that he died. So actually the one who doesn't have witnesses is the one who's actually allowed to remarry. Another case is also, let's say, Lazu Banim or Lazu Ein Banim. Let's say we're talking about where there's no witnesses for either one of the women. But one of the women had children, other women did not have children. So Eshesh Labanim, the one who had children, is Mutah. She's allowed to get remarried because we believe her that her husband died, and there's no mitzvah yibum, so she doesn't have to be concerned if her brother-in-law is alive. Ve'eshein Laban, however, the one who does not have children, is asur to be forbidden again because of the potential of the brother-in-law being alive. Now, if let's say that they had two Yevamim in this, besides besides Reuben and Shimon, there was actually also that of Levi and Yehuda. So let's say Nisyam. So let's say the woman that said my husband died, who the halacha is that she could do yibum, because regarding yibum, you don't have to come on to the edis of the other one. They were going on the case of the ratio. They don't have no edim, no children. So the halacha is that you're not really relying on the testimony of the other wife. You'll do yibum now to Levi and Yehuda. So what happens is now Mesa HaYevamim. So their new husbands of Levi and Yehuda, they pass away. So the Tanakhama says asur linaseh. They're forbidden to marry Lashuk. Why? Because you're really now back to the same old situation. You have Rachel because of Shimon and Leah because of Reuben. You have this one because of the husband of the first one. You have this one because of the husband of the first one because maybe they're still alive. Now, even though they had already married to the brother-in-laws, the Yevamot to Levi and Yehuda, with the presumption that their husbands died, yeah, that's because for themselves they believe it. But now, when they want to marry Lashuk, comes out the testimony of this one that her husband died is going to be effective for the other Yevamah. And we said that the Yevamas are not able to testify one for the other in the way to permit it. So she's back to the problem of marrying Lashuk because how do you know? Maybe Reuben or Shimon is still alive. So though Levi and Yehuda they did Yibum, but now that they died, you're back to the original problem. Maybe your other Yavam is still alive. But Rabbi Shloimy says no. Once you already permitted the women, with the presumption that their husbands are dead, to even do Yibum, which is the Isra Shazach, based on their own testimonies, so then now we're not going to make it forbidden anymore to be concerned that maybe the other Yavams are still alive, that it should be forbidden to go ahead and marry Lashuk, to have this Isser. Once you already permitted her to go ahead and do mitzvah Yibum, you're going to permit her to go marry Lashuk. We're not concerned anymore for the other brother-in-law that maybe he's still alive. Now, we learned even more, Tanu learned in the Brisa, what happens if, let's say, Lazu Eidim Uvanim, Lazu Loi Eidim Leibanim? It's just an interesting combination of the cases of the Mishnah. So Shtei Mutaris, they're both going to be permitted. Meaning, because there's no Zika of Yibum on either one. One of them because she has children, and the other one because of the other one has Eidim. Since she has Eidim, the other one, so you know her husband, who's the Yavam, died. So here in either way, that the one who has Eidim and Banim, and the other one who does not have Eidim and no Banim, is going to permit each one to marry. Again, one because she has children, the other one because the other one has Eidim, and therefore that's how she knows that her Yavam is dead. Thank you to any time. Huh?
When is the night? I think Wednesday, you know? Wednesday.